It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show. Our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. I hope you're enjoying your day so far. And I'm ready to hear how I can improve myself in today's Clark Stinks segment. And later, I'll tell you where we all stink when it comes to spending money on food. But now, Christa, you're up with today's edition of Clark
I should have never
Stinks.
encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
Clark didn't really stink on this one, but rambled about timing the market and forgot to fully address Miguel's concerns about how to mitigate market movements when rolling over a 401k to an IRA. Rollovers don't have to be all or none. They can be done in smaller chunks, sort of dollar cost averaging the rollover. Another strategy to mitigate risk would be to shift your cash and bond allocation to the 401k to be rolled over, i.e. sell your stock positions in the 401k, buy a stable value fund in the 401k, and at the same time, convert your cash and bond holdings in an IRA, emergency fund, etc. to stocks. Then roll over the funds from the 401k stable value fund so there's no market risk. Brian,
thank you. All right. So you're talking about a lot of levers for someone to pull. And in Miguel's case, I felt like, as I would with most people, the most important thing is to act on what happens with the money once it's in the new account, in the IRA. Because the thing I keep hearing again and again is that people get paralyzed and they're leaving the money in the old 401k and not moving it, which may or may not be a good decision. And there's a decision tree on that. Or when they get it into the IRA, they forget to allocate the money into various investments. So I guess the reason I gave what you felt was an incomplete answer to Miguel. I'm not that worried about short-term market risk, because if Miguel hadn't changed jobs and the money was fully invested and there's a market decline, what would I want Miguel to do anyway? I would want him to stay and ride it out, because most years are up, a lot fewer years are down. So I don't see a real reason to dollar cost average or to do the periodic selling like you talked about and go into stable value, which is basically like a savings account inside a 401k. The mechanics I want people to pay attention to is if it's a good idea to move the money out of a former employer's 401k into your own IRA, if it is in your circumstance, because you can also move it to a new employer's 401k, is to get the money invested again as quick as possible in that 401k and the same kind of allocation you had that worked in the employer-provided 401k.
you spend hours and hours in your podcast about credit card points, miles, and hotel points. I'm an American living in Europe. None of those things exist in Europe. What does exist is reasonable interest rates. You always have this jingoistic idea that America is the greatest, but I have a credit card that is a similar interest rate. I'm not tempted to spend money like you are in the U.S. With points. Admit it, the credit system in the U.S. is about spending. The savings rate in Europe is much greater, Ken.
Ken, the savings rate, I concede on this. The savings rate is much better pretty much everywhere in the developed world than it is in the United States. I mean, recently we've been saving 3 cents of each dollar we make as Americans. I've talked about countries where people save 30 cents equivalent of every dollar they make of whatever the local currency is. So we do love to spend in America, and we don't really like to save. But the thing with the credit cards is not related to anything other than the Visa MasterCard cartel in the United States charging these crazy high rates on processing cards. That's why the credit card companies fight for market share and throw all these reward points and cash backs at us, because they're ripping off the merchants. They're ripping off the restaurants, ripping off the retailers with fees that are not justified at all. And so that's where the reward points come from. And at some point, Congress needs to overcome the corruption of the dirty money from the banks and Visa and MasterCard and American Express and kill off the obscene merchant processing fees that are unprecedented in the world that we have through collusion in the United States.
Clark doesn't stink, but he could explain how he saves money at the warehouse clubs on prescriptions in more detail. Clark says he skips the prescription benefit of his insurance and pays cash instead. Simply having the RX sent to Costco or Sam's won't cut it. You have to make sure the pharmacy is aware you're a member, as non-members can fill prescriptions there, at least in my state. At Costco, I specifically had to use the member prescription program. This brought my medicine's cash price down from $160 to $20. My experience is similar at Sam's Club. Also, you can view the prescription prices using these programs in the app of the Warehouse Club. Joe.
Joe, wonderful that you said all that. And I say it from time to time and not enough. You want the member price at the warehouse clubs. And Sam's, if you're a Plus member, offers additional benefits of certain prescriptions that you get at no cost as part of your membership. At least they have been. It's possible that went away with some of the changes in Plus, but I think that's still a benefit of Plus.
I love your show, and I've been listening to every episode for several years. However, your obsession with carrying on your luggage is really irritating. You're part of a bigger problem of people carrying everything onto the plane. Tell people like me need the provided leg space. I hate being told that I have to put my small backpack under the seat in front of me. I refuse. Bag fees are just part of an overall cost. If the government's and your war on fees succeeds, the airlines will just build the cost into the overall cost of the flight. I think they should charge for carry-on suitcases. We've been flying for decades, and the airlines have never lost my luggage, and if they did, they would pay for it. And by the way, if you're flying as much as you say, you wouldn't be paying for a checked bag. Tom.
Oh, Tom, I mean, I have the ability with status to fly without baggage fees, and I still would not check a bag because I don't want them to lose it. I don't want to waste the time having to stop at the bag check, having to watch that carousel go round and round. I mean, forget even the lost bag. And you saying that the airline will pay for it, my goodness. If you saw the number of complaints we get from people whose bags are lost, and the airline does a rope-a-dope on paying a reasonable amount of money for their stuff. Okay. So why did they unbundle, charge separate baggage fees? It's a tax dodge from the airlines. If they do that, they don't have to pay taxes on the money they earn from fees like they do on the ticket itself. So Congress should fix the tax thing, and then we likely wouldn't have to pay baggage fees anymore.
I know someone who agrees very much with Tom and wants to create an airline that's like there is zero carry-on luggage on the whole airline. Like it's just everything has to be checked so things move faster.
So just so you know, the most profitable and largest airline in Europe, Ryanair, has discriminatory, they charge for bags, everything. You pay more for a baggage fee for a carry-on than you do for a checked bag. And so when Lane and I were flying Ryanair in Italy earlier this year, we actually did check our bag because it saved so much money over carry-on. So I say never, with an
Unless
exception.
It saves you money, yeah.
If it saved me money, I checked the thing and hoped it showed up.
You mentioned when paying with Cash Apps to use a credit card option. I think it's important to include how the credit card views the purchase. I recently paid a merchant through a vendor, and my Synchrony Costco card viewed Venmo as a cash advance and charged interest. When contacting the customer service, they basically said it's in the terms and conditions, and there was nothing they could do. Josh,
this is interesting because Synchrony is the Sam's Club credit card. The Costco card is Citi's. I don't know which it was. And it depends on the issuer how they'll treat that, whether they treat it as a cash advance or not.
Two about when you talked about phones getting stolen, two different posts. This one says, you didn't mention the latest Android OS has a new feature called Theft Detection Lock. It uses Google AI to sense if someone snatches your phone from your hand and tries to run, bike, or drive away. If a common motion associated with theft is detected, your phone screen quickly locks, which helps thieves from easily accessing your data. I would also recommend people with Android phones lock their SIM. It's simple and adds an extra layer of protection. If the wrong SIM unlock code is entered more than 3 times, the SIM is no longer usable and needs to be replaced. Daniel,
And you're not the only one. I've heard from multiple people. Why didn't I say the newest operating system for Android has all these protections? And now I can because you did, and I appreciate you getting the right information out there since I didn't say that. And I only talked about Apple does this, Apple does that, Apple does the other.
And this one, I attach an inexpensive wrist lanyard to my phone's case. My case has a flip-out kickstand ring that serves as a good attachment point. You can also attach a lanyard to the speaker hole at the bottom of the case. Whenever holding my phone in a crowd or other location where I worry that someone could try to snatch it, I slip the lanyard over my wrist for extra physical security. I also use the lanyard anywhere a drop could result in the phone's damage or loss. I probably need one of those. If the phone slips from my hand, it just dangles from my wrist. Having a lanyard dangling from your phone might look a little dorky to some, but if you're not concerned about phone fashion, it provides a cheap and effective bit of safety. Ken.
And Nicole of our team is showing me right now,
can I see?
So our YouTube audience can see it, as one of the lanyards.
She's got a full wallet
Yeah.
situation going on with
Yeah,
that.
so you'd lose a lot, Nicole, if all this got taken at one time. And so very good suggestion. This is the kind of thing why we do Clark Stinks.
Clark smells like a stale beer-soaked college bar.
Woo.
Beer-soaked college bar. I said that wrong. That's pretty stinky. Mary Ann's Boston College, 1992. That's what I'm immediately smelling. Not once did Clark recommend that college loan borrowers buck up and pay down their college loans. Wait 20 years and the government, other taxpayers, will pay it. This makes people who worked through college and then quickly paid off their loans into complete chumps. It's better to have partied for 4 years and let Uncle Sam pay the bill. Mark,
you bring up a very clear moral hazard issue. Student loans are a very hot topic with people because of the whole moral hazard thing. And the 20-year forgiveness, 25-year forgiveness, 10% for people who work as police officers, firefighters, 10-year. By the way, I'm completely in favor of the public service loan forgiveness program. And it's great as a way to attract people into public service jobs that may well pay lower over working lifetime. They're given incentive to have the student loans forgiven tax-free after 10 years. But as I've talked about in multiple ways on multiple occasions, the whole student loan thing is a bad idea. The problems that exist with it, every time you push the balloon on one end, it pops out another. And we need to have a full reset on how paying for college works, because what we're doing right now doesn't work.
a listener asked you to recommend where they could find a provider of lab diamonds. After going on and on about the benefits of lab diamonds, you only stated that if they know of a reputable place where natural diamonds are sold, then that place would most likely sell lab diamonds also. Well, what if they don't know of any reputable dealers? Can you see how that answer stinks? Vaughn,
I'd say I get an F or an I for incomplete on the answer, because I could not come up with a way that because I've been asked before the same question, I've still not come up with a way that I'm comfortable answering where I would go buy a lab diamond. It is so early in that industry that it's hard to know where is the best place to buy. And a lot of the bigger sellers are online sellers. I will tell you, we've had very, very few complaints from people who buy from the online sellers, buy lab diamonds, but I don't have a good way yet. I don't feel comfortable yet having a way to recommend. And we do have an article at Clark.com on places that you can find the best deals on lab created diamonds, but we don't, I would not say we know that the places are what the question was, the best places to buy them. They're the best places from our research to get a deal on one.
One place I know anecdotally a lot of people have liked is Blue Nile, and they do have a lab diamond section on their website. And they have physical stores now too.
Blue Nile was very, very, very early on the lab diamonds. And they were a pioneer in the space because originally they were a seller of traditional diamonds in competition with physical location jewelers. And they've stood the test of time, but I don't know that I'm ready yet to say, this is the litmus test. This is how you can figure out if a seller of a lab diamond is on the up and up. I mean, but we do have our list of places where people have gotten good deals on lab diamonds, which may not be the same thing as the question of who's really reputable. Too early to feel comfortable on that. So I appreciate, Vaughn, your question, and all, really, because you asked me, it was a complaint and a question. And I appreciate all the other posts. You just can't imagine how useful Clark Stinks is to me and why it's so important to me. Because as a person, all of us, we get stuck in our ways, stuck in our habits. And Clark Stinks is really important. It's almost like, getting a shock, that like, oh, I didn't think about that. I should have thought about that. I should have thought about this other angle. So I want you to know it helps me so much do a better job at what I do that you took the time to write. I might not always agree with you, but I really appreciate you taking the time to write. Coming up ahead, where we're spending our money on food that's gotten so much more expensive over the last 5 years is something that a new stat really surprised me. I want to share with you straight ahead. Okay, man, we've been through it. We in the United States have suffered so much food inflation, as also people have all over the world. And for people in extreme low-income countries, this has led to famine with how much food prices have gone up over the last several years. And the fact that food prices didn't really go up any meaningful amount at all in the last year is no victory because of how much they went up before that. And I talked about 2 years ago how we were in an odd cycle that for an individual or a couple, it was potentially the same cost to eat out as to go to a supermarket, a complete anomaly from what had always been true, which is eating at home is usually so much cheaper, or let me put it in reverse, eating out usually is going to cost you 2.5 times what it would be for the same food prepared at home. 2.5 times. So where do we spend our money? Here's something crazy. Over the years, in the United States, it's been pretty consistent that we spend half of our food dollar eating out and half eating home. That doesn't mean we necessarily eat half our meals out, because remember, it costs so much more on average to eat out than to eat at home. So even if you're eating a lot more meals at home, the meals you do eat out eat into your budgets. Oh, that was bad. Cost you so much more of your dollars versus eating at home. And so you look back year after year after year, it's really consistent. 50% out of the home, 50% in the home. The good news is that grocery prices are not going up like they were. If you look at average income in the United States, the cost of food effectively as a percent of our budget is slowly declining as a percent of our budget because our incomes are still going up, but food prices have stopped the crazy climb they were going through. And you're going to find as you go through the supermarket, some things up, some things down. Where before it was just up, 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 and away in the supermarket. So if you today want to squeeze more out of your budget for what you eat, you got to change that ratio and eat out less. Restaurateurs are facing crazy cost pressures with rents going up around the country for commercial spaces a lot because retail space is hot in most of the country. Very few vacancies in a typical shopping center, if any. So the landlords of commercial spaces have been able to push up rents. Labor costs for restaurateurs up. Food costs for them, like the rest of us, up. But it's the other components that have made eating out much more expensive relative to eating at home than it used to be. So this is an opportunity for you to have more money left in your budget if you change that ratio and eat more at home.
All right.
Which is speaking of me, wow, we eat out a lot. We certainly do in our household.
This is a related thing from Mr. Pickles in Illinois.
I love that.
Could you consider talking about the USDA's grocery budget guidelines that are published monthly? I'm guessing that while many of your listeners love Aldi, like you and I both do, but they may not have a great idea as to if their grocery budgets are quote-unquote reasonable for their family sizes. Well, the USDA publishes this guide to grocery budgets, and for our particular situation, a family of 4, the USDA moderate plan has us at a monthly budget of $1,333.70. And I'm pleased to report that by shopping at Aldi, Costco, and sometimes even Walmart, we usually come in lower than that amount, even though we don't buy the cheap eggs or cheap hot dogs. And then there's a link to it. And I know that recently...
I wasn't familiar with this USDA
wasn't
guideline.
Either. And you had an article recently talking about how we do spend in the U.S. a lot less on groceries than other places in the world.
Which is hollow right now to say that to people because of the inflation in food costs. This has been a worldwide problem, and historically, of every dollar we make, we spend less by far than people do in any other developed country as a share of our budget on food, which tells you how brutal times who knows what it's been for people in other places. But that, again, feels hollow if you go in and you're used to eggs being this much and they're that much now and stuff like that. Aldi is booming. Do you know Aldi is adding so many stores around the country? It's mind-blowing because the price you're paying is typically 40% less than at a traditional supermarket. 40%. And it's because of their business model of having very limited number of items on the shelf, much smaller spaces, and almost everything being private label. And the other supermarkets should be learning from them instead of whining about them.
I'm not going to say this lady's first name because she did sign it Mother of the Bride. So I'm going to say Mother of the Bride in Ohio. You know who you are. My husband and I have received wonderful news that our adult son is getting married. The date of the wedding is unknown. It could take place in a year. Our son and his fiancée have also mentioned the goal of buying a home in the future. We don't know when that will happen or if they'll stay in the area. We would like to gift my son and future daughter-in-law a significant amount of money to go towards a wedding or down payment on the purchase of a home. We want the money to be in an account that is flexible so they can use it within the year or stay long term if they decide to save it, but also earn as much interest as possible under both scenarios. In what form should we gift this money? Cash or check doesn't seem safe, but it seems the easiest. Definitely not gift cards, LOL. Electronic transfer into what type of account? What type of account would give them this flexibility? Or maybe where they deposit the money isn't my business. Please tell me if you think I should just give them cash and let them figure the rest out on their own. I'm a nervous mother of the groom already, and they haven't even picked a date.
So this is an interesting opposite dilemma of what I did with my oldest daughter and will do with my middle child, who's the younger daughter. I don't even know if it's older daughter, younger daughter. Anyway, oldest child, middle child, youngest is a son. So historically in the U.S., a wedding, although this is changing, was paid for by the bride or the bride's family. Now more and more couples are paying together. What I did was I sat down with my future son-in-law and my daughter and said, we're not going to pay for your wedding. And my daughter looked at me like, what are you talking about, Dad? And I said, we're going to give you this money and you can use it for your wedding, or I know both of you want to buy a house. You can use it for the house or any combination you want. You want to go get married with a JP, Justice of the Peace, and have all this money towards the house, you can do it. And what they did was they did a very, very affordable, but I thought tasteful wedding.
It was beautiful.
Adjacent to a public park, and saved on everything.
Well, your son-in-law is also rivals you.
Oh, he's cheaper than I am. He is absolutely more careful with money than I am by far. And then they made their decision. And I love that idea for you. And if your son and future daughter-in-law are going to pay for the wedding together, then I think doing something like we did is fine. Lane and I just gave them a check, and then it was up to them. And I think that's fine. If you hand somebody a check, you don't have to worry about all the check problems we talk about. They just go and deposit it. Where should they deposit it? It can be an online bank. It could be with Schwab or Fidelity. Just know that with Schwab or Fidelity, you actively put it in their highest earning federal money market fund or traditional money market account, and they'll earn the kind of rates that the big money crowd earns. And they could have the money sit there till they figure out they're using it for wedding or using it for the house.
Brandy in Illinois says, my phone was stolen a few weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I changed my email passwords and watched for any fraud. Nothing happened. Unfortunately, now the thieves have broken into my Amazon and Cash App accounts. They have tried to create Facebook, Tinder, and SoFi accounts. I have no social media. Maybe more, but that's all I'm aware of. I've frozen my credit with two of the major credit bureaus, and I'm working on the last because they are requiring a phone call. I've also canceled my debit card. What steps should I take? SoFi indicated the thieves opened a savings and checking account in my previous last name.
Wow.
Cash App has given me the name of someone who is trying to deposit into Cash App. Thanks so much. Sincerely, super stressed because of the scammers.
First of all, I'm really, really sorry, Brandy. You can't eliminate every eventuality. You've done a lot of very important steps in the process. And the thing with SoFi, that is known as synthetic identity theft. When somebody opens an account under one name, in this case your old name, using your social security number, it's possible, even in rare cases, even with a credit freeze, they might have been able to open that account. A lot of financial institutions also use a different database for identity check than what is used that people normally use for establishing credit or getting credit with Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. You just stay on top of this as best you can. And the one thing I would consider doing is thawing your credit for a day to set up a Credit Karma account. Then your credit goes refrozen with those two bureaus. And then you're able to monitor any weird stuff happening in your name or your social security number with trying to establish credit, because there's free credit monitoring there. But you've done the right things. I talked about this recently. With your phone, we tend to put on them like almost every function you can think of. Anything that involves money in particular is a risk. People that are heavy on social media, risk involved. And so go look at the apps you have on your phone and see how important they are to you, particularly if they're financial or social media, for you still to have on your phone. And so only sparingly have them on there and have them protected, not with password, but with biometrics, eyes, face, fingerprint, something like that. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on the first day of November's edition of our podcast and YouTube show. And I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful weekend in front of you. And if you need advice on the weekend, we got it for you at Clark.com and ClarkDeals.com. And starting about a week from now, the Christmas sales will start rolling out. The good ones, the November sales, what I now call Black Friday month, really get underway the week following the election. And you're going to see deals roll out repeatedly through the month, peaking right over Black Friday weekend, and Cyber Monday. But we're going to have deals galore for this month. And so get your list ready for who's been naughty or nice. Be honest with yourself how much you can afford to spend and stick to it. And through the weekend, Clark.com, ClarkDeals.com with you. Clark Deals will be all over it through the Christmas sale season, which again, Black Friday month, we're on it. And see you Monday.